The nurse stood frozen in the courtyard, her breath caught between the rising dust and the stunned silence left by the helicopter rotors. She had expected nothing more dramatic from her break than a moment of fresh air, yet now every gaze in the hospital seemed to lock onto her as though she had suddenly become a character pulled from some hidden file. The envelope shook faintly in her hands, though she tried to steady it. Her thoughts scrambling as she tried to understand what could possibly require a military escort to find her. She felt the weight of the scar along her jaw, a familiar reminder of pain that shaped her life, and she wondered if this moment was somehow connected to that night long ago. Behind her, the teenagers who had laughed at her stood stiff, no longer bold in their mockery, one of them still holding a phone halfway raised, as if unsure whether to keep recording or pretend he never meant to. The wind from the helicopter had scattered leaves across the pavement, and even those seemed to pause as though waiting for her next move. A doctor called her name hesitantly from the entrance, but she could not look back. The soldier in front of her stepped closer, his boots heavy on the concrete and his voice firm but respectful as he explained that they had been looking for her since early morning, that her identity had been confirmed, and that they were told to find her without delays. She blinked, trying to make sense of his words, her mind drifting uncontrollably to the explosion of her childhood home, the smell of burning insulation, the sharp crack of breaking beams, the searing heat that sliced across her face and left her with the scar everyone whispered about. She remembered the blur of emergency lights, the sound of people shouting, and the way her own heartbeat had thudded so loudly that it drowned everything else she had tried to forget. Those memories buried them beneath years of work and compassion, but now it felt like someone had dug them up. Without permission, the soldier gently urged her to follow him, saying the message was time-sensitive, and that someone extremely important had insisted she receive it in person. As they walked toward a bench slightly away from the crowd, she felt hundreds of eyes trailing her movements. The courtyard, normally filled with the chatter of visitors, became an arena of pure silence. Even the pigeons that lingered near the trash bins stayed still, as if sensing the tension. She sat slowly, her fingers still gripping the envelope, its surface rough against her skin. The red markings on it looked official and intimidating, not like anything sent casually or mistakenly. Her pulse pounded as she tried to peel back the flap, but her hands trembled too much. The soldier noticed and offered to help, though he did not touch the envelope itself, telling her only to breathe a little deeper. So she steadied her chest, tried again, and finally managed to open it. The paper inside smelled faintly of machine oil and dust, like it had been carried through places far from the safety of hospital walls. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the rows of alphanumeric codes printed across the header. She did not understand them, but the seriousness was impossible to mistake. She read the first line. Her heart seemed to stop for a moment. It referred directly to the incident she had spent her entire life wishing she could forget. Her throat tightened as she skimmed further, seeing references to the explosion that destroyed her home. Phrases like long-term witness, critical survivor, and classified evaluation made her stomach twist. She looked up at the soldier, demanding some kind of explanation, but he simply shook his head and told her that the details were above his clearance, that he only knew she needed to come with them because something major had shifted. The teenagers stared, pale as chalk, one of them whispering to his friend, asking what she had done, but the words did not reach her. She kept reading the document, barely noticing how her vision blurred with the pressure of old memories. Rushing forward, she remembered the investigators asking her questions when she was a child. She remembered the man who lived near their house, the one who sometimes glared at her family for reasons she never understood. She remembered hearing rumors that the explosion might not have been an accident, but everyone stopped saying such things when no proof surfaced. She had no idea. Authorities still kept the case open. The letter continued, explaining that the individual responsible for the deadly blast had been located after years of covert searches. It said the man had been part of something larger, something dangerous, enough to require intervention from a special unit. It also said that before he was fully transferred into custody, he had asked for one thing: a meeting with her. Specifically, the only surviving witness from that night, the person who unknowingly carried a piece of information he believed crucial. Her breath shortened as she read the final instruction that she was to be escorted immediately due to potential risk both to her safety and to the integrity of the information the man claimed she possessed. She had no idea what information they meant. She had been a child, barely able to understand anything during the chaos. How could she hold a key piece to something so enormous? She closed the letter slowly, her eyes lifting toward the helicopter still settling in the yard, soldiers moving with precision around Ita. Nurse she worked with approached cautiously, asking if everything was all right, but she could not answer. Words lodged painfully in the throat. The soldier stepped in, gently blocking further questions and explaining that she would need to leave with them at once. Several onlookers gasped. One woman grabbed her husband's arm, whispering about how they should not have judged the nurse based on appearances. The nurse felt her knees weaken as she stood, the weight of the paper heavy in her hands. It was surreal to think that moments earlier she had been the target of cruel laughter, and now she was someone apparently important enough for a specialized military team to retrieve. She felt overwhelmed, lost, confused, afraid, but beneath those emotions something else stirred, a faint flicker of the determination that had carried her through nursing school, through trauma recovery, through every painful moment. Since childhood she took one slow step toward the helicopter, then another, the soldier walking beside her, steady as the crowd parted silently around them. She heard no laughter now, only the rush of wind, the faint static of radios, and her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. The pilot watched her through the glass canopy, his expression unreadable, the rotor blades beginning to spin once more, sending another wave of dust skittering across the courtyards. She neared the aircraft. She looked back once at the hospital that had been her refuge, her purpose, her home. She wondered what would await her once she boarded, wondered what truths she had unknowingly carried for decades, wondered what the man who caused her deepest wound could possibly want from her now. And in that moment between the past that haunted her and the future rushing toward her, she inhaled deeply, squared her shoulders, touched the scar along her jaw, and told herself that whatever came next, she would face it just as she always had, with quiet resilience and unshakable resolve. The helicopter rose into the sky, carrying the nurse away from the hospital and from the shocked faces below. She felt the vibration of the aircraft through her bones, the rhythmic thumping of the blades, steady yet somehow unsettling. The soldiers around her sat with disciplined stillness, but she could sense their tension, as if they too understood that this mission was unlike anything routine. One of them handed her a headset so she could hear over the roar, and told her they were heading to a secure facility not far from a military training range, a place used only for high-risk debriefings and urgent transfers. So the landscape rolled beneath them. She stared at the hills and tried to calm the rising storm inside her. She kept replaying the letter in her mind, wondering what information she could possibly hold. She was a child during the explosion. How could her memory hold anything of value unless there was something she had seen before the chaos hit, something so small she dismissed it, but so significant that someone dangerous believed she still remembered it. When they landed, she was escorted into a stark building, its walls bare, its hallways echoing with every step. The air smelled of metal and disinfectant. Two officers met her and explained that she had been brought in because the suspect, the man who triggered the explosion that scarred her life, was refusing to speak to anyone except her, they said. He claimed she had seen something that could confirm the motive behind the blast, something so pivotal that the entire case hinged on her presence. She swallowed hard, unsure whether she wanted answers or escape. Finally, they led her into a dim room. Separated by thick glass on the other side sat a man older than she remembered, gaunt eyes, sunken posture rigid. He looked up slowly as she entered, recognizing her instantly, despite the decades. The sight of him made the scar on her jaw sting with phantom heat. He lifted the handset and waited. She had no choice but to sit across from him and lift her own. His voice cracked as he spoke her name, telling her he had been waiting years for this moment. He said the explosion was never meant for her family, that he had targeted something stored in the basement, a device. He believed her father kept hidden something dangerous enough that he felt justified in destroying the house. He insisted that she had seen him place the charge that night, a memory buried so deeply she wanted to deny it. But as he described the scene, a flicker ignited in her mind an image of a shadowed figure crouched near the basement door, a detail she once thought was just her imagination.